There is a tuning fork in the British Library. It belonged to Ludwig van Beethoven, and it vibrates at 455.4 Hertz, not 440, not 332, a frequency no one alive today is fighting for. Every piano in every major concert hall on this planet is tuned to a standard Beethoven never used. His fork sits in a glass case, a silent relic of a sound the modern world has collectively abandoned. What makes this truly significant is that Beethoven's frequency was not unusual for his time. It was normal. What we call a standard today would have sounded alien to him, flat, lifeless, wrong. The frequency we all inherited was not discovered, it was chosen, and everything that came before it was systematically removed from the physical world. Think about the million bells that were destroyed across 3 centuries. This isn't just about the bronze, the metal, or the raw material that governments claimed they needed. It is about what they carried, the specific pitch each bell held, meticulously tuned by families of founders whose knowledge passed from father to son across generations. That sound is gone now. The story of how it disappeared is more deliberate than anyone wants to admit. Before 1711, there was no reliable way to measure pitch. No tuning forks existed, no electronic references, no international standards. Every community on Earth tuned its instruments to whatever the largest local instrument happened to produce, usually the church organ, and organs varied enormously. 2 churches in the same city could be tuned a full semitone apart. A musician traveling from Paris to Vienna would need to retune everything upon arrival. This was not chaos. This was the natural state of sound for most of human history. Every place had its own voice. The bells in your village rang at a pitch specific to your village. The organ in your cathedral resonated at a frequency matched to the stone in the space. The choir tuned to the organ, the congregation tuned to the choir, and the entire acoustic environment of a community vibrated at frequencies that belonged to that place and nowhere else. We have physical proof of how wildly pitch varied. A tuning fork associated with Handel dated to 1740 vibrates at 422.5 Hertz. An unidentified specimen from 1780 sits at 409. Beethoven's fork, around 1800, hits 455.4. That is a span of 46 Hertz across 60 years, and these were all prominent musicians working at the center of European culture. French cathedral organs in the 1800s tuned their A as low as the 370s. The Royal Philharmonic in London swung from 433 to 455 Hertz between the 1820s and 1850s. Highland pipe bands still play today at 470 to 480 Hertz. The idea that any single frequency was the natural standard before the modern era is a complete fabrication. There was no standard. There were thousands of frequencies, each one anchored to a specific place, building, or bell. Then, governments got involved. On February 16, 1859, the French government passed a law, not a suggestion, not a guideline, a law. It declared that the note A above middle C would vibrate at 435 Hertz across all of France. This was called the diapason normal. It was the first time in history that a nation dictated the pitch of music by legal statute. Think about that for a moment. A nation that had just spent decades debating the rights of man found time to legislate the vibration rate of a musical note. The law spread. An 1885 conference in Vienna adopted 435 Hertz across Italy, Austria-Hungary, Russia, Prussia, Saxony, Sweden, and Württemberg. Sound was being centralized, but it did not stop at 435. In 1884, Giuseppe Verdi, the most famous opera composer alive, wrote to the Italian government. He supported the French standard, but added something remarkable. If the commission believed that for mathematical exigencies the pitch should be lowered to 432, he would associate himself most willingly. Italy listened. The Italian War Ministry, not a music conservatory, a military institution, adopted 432 Hz as the national standard. For 1 year, Italy tuned to a frequency that certain researchers now claim is aligned with the mathematical structure of the natural world. And then, in 1885, a conference in Vienna, dominated by British delegates, overruled them. Italy abandoned 432. The frequency Verdi endorsed, the one the Italian military had officially adopted, was discarded within 12 months. Nobody voted on it. No Italian musicians were consulted in the reversal. The British simply decided it was over. Now, here's where most people telling this story go wrong. They blame the Nazis. They claim Joseph Goebbels organized a 1939 conference in London to impose 440 Hz as a weapon of psychological control. Weeks of verifying this claim revealed that it collapses completely. The 1939 conference was organized by the British Standards Institute, not Berlin. 3 German delegates attended, and none of them was Goebbels. 5 French delegates were present, and 3 Italian delegates were present. The countries supposedly excluded were actually represented. The actual history is stranger than the conspiracy theory because it doesn't need a villain, it just needs you to follow the trail of what was physically destroyed. Look at the timeline of destruction. In 1700, Tsar Peter the Great confiscated roughly 100,000 church bells across Russia to cast cannons after the Battle of Narva. In 1793, the French Revolution's convention passed a decree on July 23rd. Each parish could keep 1 bell, and every other bell in France was to be melted. Approximately 100,000 bells from 60,000 steeples were destroyed, 80% of all church bells in France, gone in under 2 years. During the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 to 1871, the Bishop of Nancy authorized every parish in his diocese to surrender all but 1 bell for cannon production. In the First World War, 44% of all bells in Germany were confiscated or destroyed. Then came Decree Number 8 on December 6, 1929. The Soviet government forbade all bell ringing and ordered every bell in the nation melted for industrial bronze. 99% of Russia's approximately 1 million bells were destroyed. 20 specialized bell foundries closed. The hereditary knowledge of Russian bell founding, passed down through centuries of family tradition, ended. When the Soviet Union collapsed and foundries tried to revive the craft, they had to rediscover the techniques from nothing. The knowledge was gone. And then the Second World War. The Nazis confiscated more than 175,000 bells across occupied Europe. More than 150,000 were destroyed. Belgium lost 2/3 of its bells. British investigators reported that every single bell had been removed from the Netherlands. Only 300 survived in a warehouse in Hamburg. Add those numbers together. Across 3 centuries of revolutions, wars, and government decrees, at least 425,000 documented church bells were physically eliminated from Europe. Each one was a precision instrument. Each one was tuned by specialists to a specific frequency. Each one served as an acoustic reference point for its community. When the bells melted, the frequencies melted with them. And every replacement bell, every new instrument cast after the destruction, was tuned to whatever standard the current government endorsed. The old pitches could not survive. They existed in the bronze, and the bronze became cannons, coins, and industrial material. The truth is worse than a coordinated conspiracy because it requires no coordination at all. The French Revolution melted bells for coins and weapons. The Soviets melted them for industrialization. The Nazis melted them for munitions. 3 different governments, 3 different centuries, 3 completely different ideological motivations, and the result is identical. Every old frequency reference in Europe was physically eliminated. When the same outcome emerges from unrelated causes across 300 years, you're not looking at a plan. You're looking at something more unsettling, a pattern that reproduces itself through every form of centralized power, regardless of ideology. Here's what ties it all together. The buildings those bells were designed for still stand. Cathedral acoustics were not accidental. In 2016, researchers at Greek universities used sine wave sweeps to map the acoustic properties of 8 Byzantine churches in Thessaloniki. They found that architects made deliberate design choices based on sound. Acoustic vases, clay pots called amphoras, were physically embedded in the walls and domes to amplify specific